Hello guys, what's up? So for today's video lecture, I'll be discussing all about an introduction to social sciences and research. So we will be defining what is science, then let's go to social sciences, then the disciplines under social sciences, then we introduce to you what is research, and later going to a comparison of the different two research designs. Now, first things first, no, we have to define what is science. Now, imagine or visualize, when you visualize the term science, ano nga ba yung mga images na nagpa-pop out sa utak natin? So, some of you would now think of a telescope, of a magnet, atoms, or the DNA, the double helix, di ba? Or your radioactive symbol. Now, basically, tama naman yung mga images na nag-pop out sa utak natin. But yung images na yun would now limit yung definition natin or yung understanding natin about sciences. Kasi when we attempt to define science, science in its broadest definition is a systematic enterprise that builds and organizes knowledge in a form of testable explanation and prediction about the universe. So everything about the universe. So basically, when we talk about the composition of the universe, quote unquote, physics, chemistry, that is basically science. But when we look as well towards the relationship of a human individual, of human beings, or what we think within our mind, basically that is also sciences. How do we connect from society? Because society is also a part of the universe. Pag-aaralan din natin yan sa science. Now, to further understand our knowledge about science, may I elaborate more science through the branches of sciences. Actually, madaming klase ng sciences, no? And a lot of references will now include or enumerate or rather narrate yung branches of sciences. However, I just pick yung sa science mirror kasi apat lang siya and later madali siyang ma-distinguish. Now, looking into the branches of science, there are four, wherein we have natural sciences, formal sciences, applied sciences, then social sciences. Now, under natural sciences, guys, under natural sciences, guys, basically ito yung napag-aralan natin nung elementary. So, yung napag-aralan natin na elementary, di ba, yung approach natin sa science na subject is the study of living things, then the study of non-living things, which is actually classified dito sa ating column. So, if you remember, the study of living things is basically life sciences. So, nandito yung biology, the study of life, zoology, the study of animals, botany, the study of plants. Kung napag-aralan natin yung mga chlorophyll or yung mga types of mammals, di ba? Diyan papasok yung life sciences. Now, a second type of natural sciences would now be the study of non-living things. So dito papasok yung matter, di ba, yung gas, where we study physics, di ba, yung speed, velocity, etc. Dito papasok yung physical sciences. So under physical sciences, non-living things, we study now the composition of physics or matter such as physics, chemistry, earth sciences, then space sciences. Then the second one would be formal sciences. So when we talk about formal sciences, basically we're looking into the system, the language that we attempt to understand in order to understand the universe. So dito papasok yung mathematics. Kasi when we talk about formal science, parang nandito na siya eh. All we need to do is to understand the nature, the language of the system, di ba? Mathematics, logic. Logic as well is both a formal sciences and a branch of philosophy, no? Statistics. Then we have artificial intelligence or your information technology, di ba dito din papasok. Then we have also management, management subjects such as decision theory, then your game theory. Then the third one would be applied sciences. The application of sciences in real life situation. So we have engineering, di ba? So we have the School of Architect and Engineering. Dito papasok yung mga civil engineering. So the application of a combination actually of these physical sciences and applied it to real life. Then we have health sciences, so medicine, pharmacy, dental, dentistry, applied physics, applied chemistry, then applied biology. Now, our main point would now be towards social sciences. Now, it is as well science because, again, going back to the definition of sciences, we attempt to know or organize knowledge about explanations and predictions about the universe. And the themes under social sciences is it belongs in the universe. So yun yung gusto nating malaman. Now, what is social science, by the way? Now, basically, we have to look it into the etymology, no? So when we talk about etymology, we are now referring to the root words. So social sciences was termed by philosopher Auguste Comte, the father of positivism. So science social, or balik na lang din natin social sciences, no? So these two terms are actually Latin. So socius is basically companion of man. Then we have scientia or civi, which is a Latin term, which is basically to know. Now, looking into the two etymologies, we are attempting to understand the companion of man. Now, look into the term social. So I hope you are seeing the mouse. So basically, we have the man as the perennial concept, the main concept in social sciences. Now he connects. Now sabi nga ni Aristotle, sabi nga ni Aristotle that man by nature is a social animal. So he needs to connect, he needs to communicate, interact with other individuals. So nangyari dyan is yung in sciences, in social sciences, what we are attempting to understand is that connection between that human being and that other human being. Now imagine the society, it's a connection of individuals, it's a connection of human beings. So yun yung titignan natin. But again, we're not just looking into this line, into this medium, into this connection. Our main concept would now be man per se. So yan yung central concept or yung subject to be analyzed in this discipline, and that is social sciences. Now the question is, why do we need to study man? Aside from being part of the universe when we talk about science in general. Now, there are two things, no? First is towards a philosophical leaning. So, medyo may pagka-philosophy siya, no? So, looking into the nature of man in a philosophical point of view, man is always surrounded by problems. So, talking about problems, laging may question mark sa ulo niya. He is quite skeptical. By nature, man is skeptical. Bakit nga ba nangyayari to? Ano to? 'Di ba? Ano to? When you look into things, ano kaya to? From your objects, looking into the situation, bakit niya ginagawa to? 'Di ba? Ang dami nating tanong. And possibility, because that is his nature, he always asks questions. Social science can be the answer towards his questions, towards the problem of the human being, or towards our problem. So, nagiging solutions are, it's now a prescription. Social science indeed is a prescription. Then a second part, why do we need to study man? We have to look it into, this is now the main approach, into a sociological point of view. Now, when we look into the nature of a human being, in a materialistic point of view, human behavior is always determined by his or her needs and wants. Remember, we are social animals. We are a rational being. Rational means we could think, but as well we are beings, we are creatures. And as creatures, as animals, we also have our desirabilities. And talking about desirabilities, we have our needs and our wants. So we need to classify this one upang maintindihan natin yung nature ng social sciences. Now, may I cite Max Weber? Now, Max Weber is a known sociologist. So, madami siyang kinontribute sa field natin, no? So, Max Weber provided that there are three main needs of a human person because he is basically an animal. In social sciences, we now classify this one into your 3Ps. Now, ano nga ba tong 3Ps natin, no? So, nandito na siya. Wherein we have power, property, and prestige. Now, to define the following, we have to define first power. And remember, this is a need and a want. Now, when we talk about power, this is the ability to influence, control, or manipulate others. Now, yung definition kasi natin ng kapangyarihan is nakalimit sa superheroes or in a formal sense of government. No. Power is already existent or it already exists within our small groups. Kunyari yung group of friends natin, no? So, tendency kung saan, in a given scenario, saan kayo kakain, di ba? So, in our group of friends, you will now discuss, saan tayo kakain? So, ito si kaibigan mo, si Karen, sasabihin ni Karen, kain tayo sa Jollibee. Sasabihin naman ni Gretchen, I'm just mentioning names, nag-pop out na lang sa utak ko. Sasabihin ni Gretchen, kain tayo sa Jollibee. Sabi ni Karen sa McDo, sabi naman ni Bogart, sa sa Mang Inasal, no? And yun yung interest. Now, they have presented their interest at mangyari doon, magkakaroon ng clash. So basically, when we talk about power, you're now influencing somebody towards your desirability, towards a certain goal. So yung goal ko, kakain ako sa McDo, yung goal niya, kakain siya sa Jollibee. So magkakaroon ng clash, nagkakaroon automatically ng kapangyarihan, an interplay of power, and we call it as politics. So sino mananaig doon, siya ngayon ang may kapangyarihan. Now, from your small groups in the classroom, sino may kapangyarihan? Basically, the teacher, where he or she will now impose yung rules or yung mga desirability niya sa loob ng classroom. And from a larger perspective, we have now the government wherein we have officials, police personnel, sila may kapangyarihan. Now look up. Ito yung definition. Man by nature is determined by his needs and wants, and we are beings, so we are creatures. Animals as well have that power, di ba? So quote and quote yung kay di ba, the survival of the fittest. So nakikita natin it's as well similar with the animal kingdom. However, we are higher entities, we are higher beings because we could now think. Now aside from power, we now go to property. Now, property, please take note, this is one of the most common, this is now the most common need of a human person. No? So when we define power or wealth, it refers to the possession and ownership of something that is tangible. And you own that one, basically you could now utilize that one. When we talk about utilize, you could now consume, use it, etc. No? So an example of your property would now be your food. So property yan, kasi pwede mo siya magamit, kakainin mo siya, you consume it. Food, shelter, housing, cell phones, etc. House and lot, yan, that is basically considered to be property. Now, the last part would now be in terms of prestige. When we define prestige, it is similar with reputation or esteem. So, esteem associated with one's position in society. Now, this is quite distinguishable compared with animals kasi when we talk about prestige, this is similar with our labeling, with our social identity. We as social animals, we present ourselves. And yung labeling na yan would now gives us a chance to overlap against another human being. So an example of a prestige would now be your course, di ba? I am proud to be a pol-sci student. So yun yung context ng prestige, no? Or in terms of gender, di ba? I am proud to be a male, I am proud to be a female. Although it sounds to be sexist, basically that is prestige. Or from the place that you belong. I am proud to be from Baguio, or your ethnicity. I am proud to be an Ilocano. I am proud to be an Igorot, di ba? Or from the school, I am proud to be a Luisian at Atenean. So yun yung nagiging prestige. Need and want din yan. Kaya yung notion nga natin, di ba? You want to be lawyers, you want to be doctors, you want to be a professor. Kasi nga, yun yung isang need ng isang human being. That social identity, that position in the society. Now, talking about needs and wants, please take note that there's a problem behind it. So, going back to sa philosophical point of view, no, man is always surrounded by problems. So, yan. May problema yan. Ano yung problema? Itong needs and wants, we wanted them unlimited. So, human beings wanted and acquired this unlimited needs and wants. Sino nga bang ayaw sa unlimited na power, di ba? Sino nga ba yung ayaw sa property, yung unlimited property? Unlimillionaire, di ba? Or prestige, di ba? You get all of the degrees, you get all of the profession, cursus, dizon, MA, MBA, PhD, attorney, lieutenant, pope, father, di ba? Yun yung nature ng human beings. We want unlimited needs and wants. However, the problem is these needs and wants are scarce. Power is scarce, property is scarce, prestige is scarce. When it comes to power, gusto natin lahat masusunod. Pero hindi lahat ng kagustuhan natin ay pwedeng masunod. You want to be the president, however, you cannot be the president because the position is scarce. In terms of property, let us, for instance, food, di ba? Gusto natin lahat ay busog. Gusto natin lahat ay makakain. But looking into the situation, hindi lahat pwedeng makakain. Not everyone cannot get that piece of the pie. In terms of prestige, reality sake, you want to graduate, di ba? However, the problem, not everyone will graduate. Because the position, these needs and wants are scarce. Now, ito yung problema natin sa social sciences. Now, how to solve scarcity? Ito, okay, we are social animals. Therefore, we need to form groups. So human beings will now form groups, and these groups are called structures, or the other way around. Groups could be called as structures, or structures could be called as a group. It depends on the theory later. If you look into the sociological theoretical frameworks, no. So yun yung nature natin. Okay, para ma-solve natin tong problema, magtulungan tayo, mag-cooperate tayo. Through how we form groups, and through groups we will now achieve these needs. Now, dito na nabubuo, by the way, I forgot to include this one, maganda to. A single twig breaks, but a bundle of twigs is strong. So basically, kung ikaw lang mag-isa, you cannot do it alone. So kailangan mo magsama ng mga uto-uto para lumakas kayo, 'di ba? Not basically. This is an important feature when we talk about human society. The concept of cooperation, 'di ba? Kaya human beings is known to be one of the strongest species, the strongest creature, aside that they think they cooperate, 'di ba? Unlike with monkeys, a monkey is known to work among a maximum of 20 monkeys. Hindi na sila pwede mag-exceed. Pero ang human being, kasi masyadong dynamic tayo, we have this thinking, we could now form groups into millions and achieve a common goal. Kaya we are now the most dominant species around the world, no? Now, ganito. Ay, example lang naman yun, no? Now, ganito. Okay. So, we have your needs and wants. And people will now form your groups. Now, these groups are called social groups in a conflict theory point of view. So, nagkakaroon ng conflict. Or in terms of structures. So, when we talk about structures, people will now form group para mag-collaborate. So, nakita nyo na dito, no? Social groups, medyo conflicting, no? So, nagkakaroon ng competition. Structures, medyo cooperation. If you are familiar with structural functionalism, di ba? Yung unity, social cohesion. Then dito sa social groups, social stratification. I hope na nagets nyo, no? Now, ganito yung analogy. Okay. People wanted power. In order to gain power or to organize in order to get power organizedly, may term ba organizedly, people will now form into political parties para makakuha ng power. Now, people who wanted property will now form groups called your classes or structures called classes. Kaya we have your upper class, lower class, your bourgeoisie, proletariats, no? Then your prestige. In order for the people to form prestige, to attain prestige, they will now form social groups. Now, social groups will now be, for instance, fraternities, di ba? I am proud to be a Crip, a Blood, di ba? Social groups such as your courses, di ba? In order to get the diploma. So, ito yung social structures natin. Now, tendency, these structures, in the conflict point of view, nagkakaroon ng conflict. So, yung mga social groups na yun, nagkakaroon ng competition. So, nagkakaroon ng interplay. So, nagkakaroon ng interplay because scarce nga ito. Hindi lahat ng parties pwedeng makakuha ng power. So, nagkakaroon ng kaguluhan, etc. Or in the same time, nagkakaroon ng cooperation but in the end, nagkakaroon din ng conflict. Basta disorganized. Now, dahil dito, in order to have a good flow of attaining these needs and wants, dito na nabubuo yung basic institution of our society. So, looking dito sa ating institutions, now, when political parties interplay in order to achieve power, they will now form the state. Diba? The state. When classes would now interplay with one another in order to attain property, they will now form the market. And lastly, when social groups wanted to get prestige and they interconnect with one another, dito na nabubuo yung institution natin na civic society. Now, bakit civic society and hindi society? Kasi itong tatlo guys will now basically form now the society as a whole. So we have the state, market, and your civic society. Pasensya na, maingay yung aso, no? Yan. And the central concept would be the human being with you, as you, diba? You. So you connect to the state, you connect to the market, and you connect to the civic society. And remember, we still need those needs. So we need the power. So nagkakaroon tayo ng interplay with state in order to get the power. Towards the market, we need property, we need food. Kaya lagi tayong pasok sa market. Then also we need prestige. Kaya nakikilaro tayo sa civic society. So yan yung ano natin. So yan, that would now be the society. Now the problem is, nandun pa rin yung problem, yung scarcity. Nagkaroon ng disorder, medyo magulo pa rin when it comes to your structures and even to your institution. Now the solution here now is yun nakita nyo na, yun is use social sciences. Social sciences would now solve yung problema natin when it comes to society. And how to solve that? Understand the nature of the institutions, understand the nature of the structures, and understand the nature of the need of the human person. So yung problema sa state is basically solvable, if that is may term bang solvable, is basically solved by political science. Political science is the systematic study of the state and government. It also analyzes the theme of power, diba? How power is being interplayed, how power is being provided. Now, when it comes to the market, The science that will now understand the problems of your market, the issues between your classes, and how to organize property is basically economics. So it's the general term. Economics refers to the study or the systematic study of the production, distribution, and collection of goods and services. Then lastly is we have the civic society. So when we look into civic society, it's the so that's a civic society now. So the study that would now let us understand the civic society is basically sociology. So the study of what is happening to the society. So these are the main disciplines, no. But again, hindi pa lang siya main disciplines, no, kasi we need other disciplines as well. In the first place, how could understand how this institution without understanding the main concept, which is now the human being. So how does the human being think? Diyan napapasok yung psychology. But not just how to think, how does that human being present him or herself towards this institution? So kailangan ng behavior. So diyan din papasok yung psychology. How does man emote or feel towards interacting with the people who will now compete or cooperate in order to get those three needs. Diyan din papasok yung psychology. Now, defining psychology, psychology is basically the study of human behavior, how he present himself towards the society, human emotion, how he feel the affective part, and how he think, his attitude, his thinking, etc. No? And we also have anthropology. And when we talk about anthropology, anthropology is basically the study of man by nature. From the word anthro, we have now man. So we look in towards the culture. Kaya may tinatawag tayo na political culture, economic culture, social culture. Magkatandem talaga yan, no? And the rest, madami yan, no? So, for instance, when we talk about history, di ba? You could not understand all of this one without looking into the past. So, we have to understand history. History as well is a different field. We also need to look into statistics kasi we have to look towards, kunyari, numbers, di ba? Some features of these disciplines are presented through empirical data. And when we talk about empirical data, we are now looking into numbers. So we have statistics, geography. Man cannot exist, property could not exist without land. So we need to understand geography, jurisprudence and law. Basically, it's not just political science, di ba? That the society is governed by laws. Market is governed by laws, society is governed by laws, the state is governed by laws. So we have to look into laws as well. So basically, when we look into social science in general, it's basically multidisciplinary, transdisciplinary, interdisciplinary. We have to connect disciplines, we have to use a lot of disciplines. When we approach towards certain social phenomena, we use a combination of different disciplines. Kaya kung political scientist ka, economista ka din. Kung sociologist ka, political science ka din. Kung anthropologist ka, psychologist ka din. But yung dominant theory lang natin, yung dominant approach natin is the discipline that you have picked. Now, in this case, you are political scientist. Now, tendency, anong reason niya? Anong reason ng why I'm explaining this in your subject is basically we have to look you have to also understand the statistical way kasi nga you are political scientists and we will be encountering a lot of problems in the society which numbers could now describe and even solve yung mga problema na yun. Now, speak about problems, we go back to science. So science and research. Bakit nga ba tayo nagre-research sa political science? And we have to look it into the nature of political science again. And again, political science is science. Human nature have the need to grasp knowledge. Now, this is again a philosophical point of view. So back tayo sa basics, no? So looking into, we need knowledge. We now use this philosophy branch called epistemology. Now, all subjects basically uses epistemology as an approach, especially in research subjects, no? So epistemology deals with knowledge. So it's a systematic study or a philosophy branch that deals with knowledge. Now, paano nga ba na-generate yung knowledge at paano natin siya magagamit sa subject natin ngayon, no? So in this case, political science na yung ano natin, but every discipline could now course could now gain a little bit dito sa discussion ko, hopefully. Okay. How knowledge has been generated, no? So may I use yung gamit ni Superstein. Kalimutan ko yung book, no? Superstein yata yun, no? So there are four processes on how we now generate knowledge, and later this is essential when it comes to research. Okay, first things first, we as human beings, we all started with percept, or not human beings, as creatures. Now, when we talk about percept, it's basically we're now gathering the knowledge. So there are two types of percept, by the way, pamagets natin itong perception. Or before going to the two steps, when we talk about perception, this is the both animals and human beings have the same steps when it comes to perception. So both humans and animals have perception. Pero pagdating ngayon dito, medyo ano na, na talo na natin yung mga hayop, di ba? Basically, going back to perception, it's the first step on how to generate knowledge. Now, there are two types of perception. We have external perception, or we call it simply as percept. Then we have internal perception, or simply we call them as image. Pag sinasabi natin percept, yung knowledge is gathered outside. Ano ibig sabihin nito, no? Basically, this is your five senses. How do you gather knowledge? By using your five senses. Percept pa lang tayo, no? So, five senses would include your sense of sight, hearing, taste, smell, touch, etc. No? Kompleto ko ba? Basta ganun, no? So, nakita mo yung, kunyari, nakikita nyo ako at nakikita ko din kayo. So, basically, what is already happening is perception. So, basically, yung walang diagram ng utak, no? So, basically, I hope, tignan nyo na lang dito, no? So, nagga-gather pa lang, no? Papasok pa lang siya sa utak ko. Yun yung percept, external. So, the knowledge has been gathered outside the human brain. Now, on the other hand, we now have image, or sinasabi natin na internal percept. When we talk about internal percept, yung knowledge is already nasa loob na ng utak natin. All we need to do is to spark it, something that would now initiate it. Now, for instance, pag sinabi kong araw, may papasok ng image sa utak nyo, di ba? So, automatically, from the term, automatically, may na-construct ng image sa loob ng utak nyo. You don't need the five senses anymore to gain yung knowledge natin about the sun. Automatically, what is the sun? Kung sinabi ko sun, may pumapasok na image nyo, na image ng sun, di ba? So, nakita nyo, it's color yellow, or white, di ba? Tapos may smiley face, di ba? It depends on your construction of your image, di ba? So, ganun yung first step. Now, that makes us similar with animals. However, what makes us different from animals is the second step, abstraction. So, looking into abstraction, your percept and images natin will now be generated into concepts. So, itong concepts na to, actually, we're now providing values or meaning behind these percepts and images. So, nag-generate na siya sa loob ng utak natin. However, please take note, this is a political science subject. So, more likely or mainly, yung focus na concepts natin, if we want to understand about something, the term there is understand, to give knowledge about certain concepts, ito yung main topics natin sa political science, or we term it as perennial concepts. So, going back to the image, going back to the philosophical question, what and why, di ba? Why something exists, how does this exist? Ito yung gusto nating malaman, perennial concepts. So, man, what is man? Why is man? Di ba? Ganun, di ba? Why man exists, etc. Bakit ganun yung nature ng man? Yan yung target natin sa political science. When it comes to society, di ba? Basically, political scientists could not understand the problem of the state without looking into the society as a whole. So, what is state? Why is state? When it comes to state, di ba? Yan, di ba? We have to define the state. Dapat alam natin yan. Government. Ano yung problema sa government law? Ano nga ba yung nature ng law natin? So, yun yung concepts na gusto natin malaman sa political science. And from the generation of concepts, we will now go to the last step, which is now the generation of knowledge. And we now term this as judgment. This is now, we now generate yung knowledge natin. Now, how is this? There are two things, through reason or experience. If you check, no, if you remember yung mga discussions nyo sa philosophy, di ba? When we talk about image, more likely reason yan, because reason is basically internal yan eh. Internal yan eh. Yan yung lagi natin tandaan. Now, on the other hand, we now have percept. Percept is basically experience. So, when we talk about experience is basically extracted from outside by using your five senses. Now, anong kinalaman ng research dito? Now, research already starts within your mind. Yan yung lagi natin tandaan. Basically, your mind will now generate basic knowledge or foundational knowledge, pero kulang pa lang yan. Kaya kailangan natin ng external methodology in order to achieve that final product, which is now yung mga problems na gusto nating malaman. Now, we have now your scientific method. Now, when we talk about the scientific method, medyo gasgas na yung alam natin na poheyak, or yung we start with the problem, observation, hypothesis, experimentation, analysis, then conclusion. Although I'm not saying na mali ito, tama naman ito. However, the problem with this poheyak model is basically this only reflects yung quantitative design natin. Kasi when you look, this is used in science, and basically approach natin sa science is deductive. And later we will know ano ba yung deductive. However, in research, there are two designs na kailangan natin gamitin. At ito na ngayon yun. Walang transition. Okay, so ito na ngayon yun. Wherein we have quantitative and qualitative. Now, going back dito sa poheyak, it only features or presents yung quantitative data natin. Although, tandaan natin guys, in political science, we use a lot. We use either quantitative and qualitative depending on the design. So, ganito pag quantitative guys, ang tinatawag natin dito is deductive. When we talk about deductive, I'll define it later, general to specific. We already start with the theory. So, going back dito, yung theory natin is basically considered as an image. So, we already have a reason. We already have a base knowledge. And what we do in quantitative is only to test that theory and validate that theory whether that is correct or wrong. Correct or right. Right or wrong. Ganun, di ba? Or basically another definition of quantitative, we're now validating a certain theory in a certain situation. Kaya ngayon yung term na deductive, general knowledge applied to a specific situation if that theory is applicable or not. So we started with the theory. Theory is basically a foundation of knowledge. It's a body of knowledge rather. Hypothesis, di ba? Yung hypothesis natin is we now have a tentative answer, a tentative conclusion towards a certain problem. Then we have to observe it. So talking about observation in science, ito yung kunyari in terms of photosynthesis, di ba? So plant A, hindi mo ilalagay sa araw, plant B, ilalagay mo sa araw. Then given a time duration, check natin kung ano yung mas effective. So nagkaroon ng causal comparative methodology, di ba? Then lastly is the conclusion, just to validate if the theory is right. And that is now quantitative. Now, the other hand will now be qualitative. Qualitative is inductive. Specific, then we now attempt to generalize things. Now, when you look into the arrows, no, ito pababa, ito pataas. Yung foundation ng qualitative kasi, we all started with observations. Then you observe something, then tendency, there's a problem or there's probably a pattern. Actually, dapat yung susunod dito is pattern. So, observing and you have now connect patterns. Now, paano itong patterns is up to you. We will be looking towards that pagdating sa methodologies. Now, look into your observation. Oh, mukhang may pattern. Bakit yung mga taong ito biglang nagsasalita ng etc. Just to give an example, no? So, more likely, you now provide a tentative hypothesis. Hindi kaya ganito yun? So, then you will now analyze that social group, that control group, and later, you now find a tentative solution or a tentative answer towards your problem, you now generate a theory. So dito sa qualitative, what we are attempting to do is to generate a new body of knowledge. Now, ito yung guys, no? So take just head start or a tip, no? So quantitative basically, or rather, all studies, all researches are basically qualitative in nature. Kailangan may foundation. So lahat ng knowledges natin ay nagsisimula sa qualitative. So from qualitative, then we go to quantitative. We are now validating if the generated knowledge is sort of true to a certain population, or we just want to validate that theory. But basically, we will be learning about the difference between two and in detail pagdating natin sa research methodologies. So quantitative methodologies and quantitative methodologies. Now here's a brief comparative table. I hope it could help. So, ganito lang siya, no? Although mag-distinguish pa natin siya lalo, no? So, research design, quantitative and qualitative. Methodology, deductive. So, when we talk about quantitative, general, specific siya, while qualitative is specific to general. Now, the school of thought, ganito this is arguable, definitely, some would argue, but may I justify first one? This is now the common school of thought. So, when you hear about quantitative, basically how it was generated, how the knowledge was generated, it's through rationalism, basing it from reason. So yan, no. Then qualitative, empiricism, source of knowledge, reason and experience. Then when to use qualitative and quantitative, dito please take note. Pag quantitative guys, again nasabi ko, retest, validate the data. While qualitative, total absence of knowledge. So wala ka pang nabuo sa qualitative. Yan. We will be understanding these two when I will now define the different types of quantitative and qualitative design. So yan guys, thank you. So basically, sum up of everything, we have now defined what is sciences from the 4 branches. Then we go now to your social sciences. Then from your social sciences, we define social sciences, the nature of social sciences. What I've used was basically Max Weber. And from Max Weber, we now began generating the disciplines under social sciences. And basically, lahat nung na-mention ko doon, hindi yun lahat ng mga social sciences. Napakadami actually. So, just handpick para medyo organized, tapos brief lang naman yung discussion. Then later, we now jump into research. And from research, research, then epistemology, then we now classify yung dalawang research design, which is now quantitative and qualitative. So thank you guys. What's up?